Well, hello there. I haven't done a video for a while, so I've been thinking about making a video at some point, and I've decided to make a video now. I have found a treasure trove of old videos, recordings of speeches, made by a historian now fallen into disgrace, arguably by his own doing. I will put a lot of arguablys in this. And his name is David Irving. Now, David Irving has written loads of books, and his history arc fundamentally goes as follows. He started writing books with a completely different philosophy to most other historians. So the problem with all of academia, and this is absolutely true because I was in it, is that whenever a paper is written, which is basically a thesis that is then somehow demonstrated or something or discussed, it needs to base itself on the work of others. So it requires you quoting other people's work, which leads you to reading other people's work. And what he had found out is that other historians, who were famous for being historians, used each other's work as sources in this beautiful, strange circle of confirmation bias. Now, when some piece of knowledge in the, not so much scientific, but say university world, is established as true, sort of on a permanent basis, so to speak, you can't really attack it, but you must quote it. As I recall, for my brief period in university where I then dropped out, thank goodness, one of the best decisions I've ever made, I remember that whenever I was writing any document, I was expected to quote others, and I had to read this astonishingly boring pieces of information to then quote stuff. I never did it much, but I had to do it. So this is very believable, and I recognize it. So his accusation towards other historians. So what he started doing is he did something completely different. He went and looked for original documentation and found that a lot of the documentation was hidden or blocked by governments, etc., etc. It's very obvious why. Okay, all governments are mired in skeletons in closets. It's very obvious. This does not bear any level of scrutiny as a statement, or doesn't bear. There's no point in engaging in any level of scrutiny. Governments hide information constantly, right? And they hide their history too. Not quite sure why. I think the vast majority of people wouldn't care. And so far as I can tell, governments are essentially immune from any type of repercussion, but perhaps I'm naive. I'm not sure. Anyway, so he has gone boots on the ground. So went, his particular area of expertise is World War II and its surrounding events and characters. And he found diaries, documents, ingratiated himself to people who were close to figures of power at the time. In Germany, he speaks German. He learned German while working there, I think as a metal worker or something. And so he started writing books in a very, very different way. And they are so full of annotations, because we own a few. They're almost illegible at some point, because they're encyclopedic, essentially. But he prides himself on this work. Now, like I was mentioning, in his life curve, this was the beginning, let's call it. Then he enjoyed a period of substantial success. And then he started covering the wrong things and started gaining far too much notoriety in circles he wasn't supposed to. And he went from darling of the historical world to open and total repudiation. Now, I learned of him several years ago. I want to say 10 might be an exaggeration, but hey, time does pass, so I'm not sure. But let's say 10 years ago, I've learned of him. And one of the books that I enjoyed and read of his, because I was so intrigued by the idea, was a book about Hess. Hess was Hitler's second in command and then became third in command later, and then he became an enemy of the state. And I remember this name from studying history in school. I was a terrible student, so I know almost nothing from that, which puts me in a peculiar place of sort of mental freshness. I don't have any, or at least at the time didn't have any preconception on any of this stuff. Preconceived notion. Pre-learned notion. There you go. So I began reading this book, and I was absolutely fascinated by its contents. To give you the it's not that long actually, to give you the somewhat long story short, Rudolf Hess decides at some point against, or rather without Hitler's knowledge, to have a plane constructed for himself that is going to be capable of a one-way trip. The intent is to land in Scotland alone, where he will attempt to make contact with the Duke, to speak with him, to attempt to get him to persuade the royal family and Churchill to stop the impending war. Now, once he does that, and he lands remarkably close to his target apparently, he gets imprisoned and presumably doesn't succeed in his mission. But when Hitler learns of it, apparently Hitler repudiates him. Now, what is fascinating about this story, or it was to me, is that very evidently this individual it deserves a Nobel Peace Prize or something to that effect. Because that is one of the most insane missions that one could ever do, clearly of his own accord, with that specific intent. And, suffering ultimate reprisal from his own government and presumably, strong alliance / friendship, I suppose, to whom he would think to be one of the most important people that's ever been. That would have been the Führer for him, right? I think it's a remarkable story. And then I basically looked up the official information about this, and it all checks out. So this must have been one of those books that he published where he wasn't yet persona non grata. He wasn't yet being attacked left, right, and center for his content. I was really inspired by this at the time, and so I decided to call him. His number was available on the website, so I called him, and somewhat to my surprise, he picked up, and it was him. And I spoke with him personally, and I asked him for permission to make a video game recreation of this book about Hess's story, which he granted me verbally. There was no contract or anything like that. He simply granted me permission to use his work for it. I began the product, actually, and then I stopped. I didn't want to work on it alone. I didn't think that I had the skill to do it. So I ended up not finishing it. Bit of a shame, but that's how it went. It was going to be a point-and-click adventure. A classic, standard, old school point-and-click adventure. Surprisingly difficult genre to make, but that's very much an aside. Anyhow, so I have this treasure trove of his speeches now, and I'm finding even more, and I'm archiving them for posteriority. And there is one thing, there's several angles I can take this, but there's one thing that I want to briefly discuss. At the moment, or in the next few days, there's going to be a big event in Germany that has to do with my field. I have a product of mine being presented there. And I can't be present this time around for financial reasons, but I will be contractually obligated to be present next year. And it makes me nervous to go to Germany. And the reason why I'm nervous to go to Germany is because in Germany you are not allowed to have certain opinions. You're not allowed to question certain facts. The facts that get cited from book to book to book, especially when it pertains to World War II, cannot be questioned. If they do get questioned, then you can suffer extremely severe repercussions, life-altering repercussions, as Irving has, as Ernst Zundel, I believe is it? Ernst Zundel. My German pronunciation isn't solid, is it? But there you go. Canadian chap, actually. Very flamboyant artist. He was detained in Germany because of this. One Miss Ursula Hagerbach, I think is her name. Old lady. These are all people who propagate alternative ideas to or readings of the events in World War II. Now, anybody even vaguely honest knows that World War II is our new sort of origin story. It's kind of the New Testament. You all must believe this. And in light of numerous recent events, like for example, the magic virus, as I refer to it, or COVID, you can see how much power the media and the government, when they work together, have to suppress thought, to suppress positions, especially when those positions are in either denial, as they like to claim, or at least in contrast, in opposition, there you go, to whatever is correct now, the politically correct position. For example, during the magic virus, YouTube and all sorts of services had to post this is the real information, this is false information, blah, 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 blah. And now the time has passed, what's actually happening is that most of us are kind of forgetting that even happened. And I try to not to forget, because I was there and I remember. And I was there in 2 countries, actually. So I experienced it differently and all of the weird nuances, and I was researching stuff. I actually started writing a book on my own about that for the first time in my life, and I got pretty far. I got like 40, 50 pages in. It's quite a lot of data collection and everything like that. I never finished it, and I probably never will. I will keep the information for my children so they can peruse it when I'm dead, if they want to. Either way, my point is, I'm working by deduction here. And I'm kind of a bit all over the place, you're going to have to bear with this. So if today, where there's so much information easily findable everywhere, governments can and do, and media can and do, consistently fool around with information, trying to depict something in a certain way, and so on and so forth. And if you do question it, you will get pilloried by people, by friends, family, by media. And if you're famous, you get pilloried by the world. That's how it works in social media. There's so many cases. Look at the situation with the, what's her name? I can't remember. The lady who wrote Harry Potter, right? She is persona non grata now because of some reason or whatever. And she simply has an opinion about certain things that happens to be unpopular. and happens to be unacceptable to some people, who are probably a tiny minority as well. It is certainly the case that this applies to the past. 100%. It's not possible to argue that now is magical and yesterday wasn't. Because I can see the now and I remember the yesterday, and the yesterday where I could see it with my own two eyes, and I was there during the magic virus, and how people are forgetting it now. People are forgetting that they actively policed their own neighbors. People are forgetting that, and I'm sure that if you were to question them and go like, yeah, I mean, you wouldn't snitch on your own neighbors. Of course I wouldn't. That would be ridiculous. But you did. I remember seeing people with two masks on top of one another in a car alone. I saw it with my own two eyeballs. I remember the zealots. I remember all of this, and everybody's forgotten. It's kind of gone. It's gone from memory. It's gone from memory, the fact that for 2 years we were locked up at home for no reason. Or for a fear. Therefore, it stands to reason that things that occurred in the past merit discussion, merit debate, merit investigation. Well, not on certain topics. There are various countries in which investigation on certain topics is verboten. You cannot do it, or you will end up in jail. Now, I have obviously, I reserve the right, let me put it this way. I reserve the right to not divulge my position on certain things, especially on things I don't know about, right? It is simply impossible, so far as I can work out, to really know what happened in the past. And this applies to a very recent past, say last week, right? I have my perception of things based on how I observe them. I have the perception of some other people based on how they observe them and potentially documents. That's what the historians are for. And that's about it. And then I have all of the opinions or all of the opinion people, like I suppose I'm doing now. And maybe some I agree with more and therefore confirmation bias, I believe that that's more real. Put it that way. But I am claiming that it is impossible to know the past with certainty. And I do not know if, therefore, by stating, for example, that certain events that I'm supposed to believe are real, I'm not so sure. I don't know if I fall into the category of somebody who could be jailed in countries like these. Now, obviously, I'm just a tiny, tiny, tiny little person, and I don't matter to anybody, and that's fine. If I were bigger, though, would I? Would this be an unacceptable position to hold? I think it's very reasonable. It's more than reasonable. It's in fact the ultimate agnostic position. It just seems to me correct. Right? And even better still, right? My position doesn't demand that you change yours. My position simply states I'm not prepared to march unthinkingly in a certain direction because you have told me that I have to. Even if you did it by law. I think I'm in the right to do this. I think this is correct. So every time I travel to Germany, I'm somewhat careful. When there, I met an individual with whom I spoke at length, and at some point we had a row. We were talking specifically, actually, about AI art and other things. But I was fascinated by his opinions. The Germans don't even know how spectacularly authoritarian they are in the mind. It's like inside their skulls, deeply embedded. Right? And he was telling me all sorts of stuff but one phrase stood out to me. He said, what did he say? He said something, I mean, I don't want to misquote him, but whatever. I'm not even mentioning his name or anything, so it doesn't matter. He said something to the effect of, everybody who has conspiracy theories should be jailed immediately because they will eventually become a Nazi. I think something like that. That was the terminology they used. Now, of course, we all know that the term Nazi is used to mean somebody who doesn't conform to certain ideas or whatever, or disagrees with me fundamentally. That's what it means today. It's just an insult, right? I thought that was extraordinary because there are so many conspiracy theories that are real. Sure, some of them are out there, etc. Or some of them are very figurative. Why they point at something more literal in a poetic fashion, put it that way. But there is so much nowadays that you realize, that people are realizing, myself included, that can't be investigated properly, that must be believed. From the Epstein files to I don't know, Kirk's death and its mysteries, to I don't know, the JFK files. You can go as far back as you like, or as close to the present as you like. There's so many questions about so many things. And so many questionable behaviors, for example, of all of the people that are happy, which I've already covered as a concept, about somebody being murdered for their opinions. Like, this is fundamentally the same concept. It's a complete assault on the freedom, not of speech. That's what fools say, ironically. It's the freedom of thought. It's the freedom for you to run your mind in trying to wrap your head around what you believe, that becomes circular, to what you have pondered on and are now prepared to take a punt and call a truth as you understand it. Right? Which doesn't mean you're close to debate or persuasion. Or certainly I'm not. But, you know, that is not allowed. For example, all of the people who think that Kirk was not assassinated by that chap, that think that the chap is a scapegoat, and they go into analyzing how the round hit him, where from, what angle, how come the people are not reacting to any sound, which they should have, naturally would have done it, and that's believable as a point of view, etc. You know, it's just questioning things, investigating things, looking for sources, looking for things, and so on and so forth. And there's also theories with people saying that they are stupid or that they are clever or whatever. The point is that particular situation doesn't seem to be a spicy area, so it kind of doesn't matter. So it's as if they let us run our mouths. But if you start talking about other content, as David Irving did, you are going to pay a severe price. David Irving did it globally. Banned from several countries and so on. I did a video about that Swedish chap, the Golden One, being expelled from Canada for his ideas. And he has no ideas that are pernicious. He just has some opinions. He was invited there by people who are there, so presumably those ideas are in Canada. It is a very strange world. So, what is the conclusion of this video? I should really get to it. I am preserving this information that I have found of Irving's. I also own some of his books. And the reason I'm doing this is because Irving is a hero. Not so much because I agree or disagree with his content or his conclusions. But anybody who gets absolutely trounced, destroyed legally, in the court of public opinion, and so on and so forth, for work that he has done, and he does not stop and plows on and resists, that is remarkable. He has endured a level of abuse that is hard to believe, despite the fact that lots of people will think that he deserves it. It's fine, you can think that if you like. I don't think anybody with any opinions that is willing to write about them deserves to be tortured or publicly destroyed. I really don't think so. I mean, there's people that write ridiculous things like, I don't know, say the benefits of circumcision. Okay, I think that is freaking disgusting. Right? Child genital mutilation is unbearably awful, right? So, it doesn't mean I want to destroy their existence. I simply disagree with them. And I move on. But that's not what happens when you talk about certain other topics. Certain topics are actually illegal to address in any way in certain countries like Germany. I'm not happy with that. I think that's disgusting. And I think David Irving is a hero. And I know he's in very rude health at the moment. And I can only wish him all the best, and to his family and all of his girls. And and I can thank him for all of his service and effort towards bringing information to the fore. Whether he's right, wrong, or anything in between is an entirely immaterial point of view. He wasn't pushing his books onto schools. He wasn't doing any of that. He was selling his books to whoever wanted to read them. And his work is being destroyed and burnt. And has been. Well, if I found some of his work and I can preserve it, then I know I'm doing the right thing. And if that then causes me issues when I go to Germany next, well, I better keep my trap shut while I'm in Germany, won't I? So remarkably similar to your past. You never change, do you?